the day, my friend?
Not too much. Just got done writing about football stuff for the Big Ten. For those that maybe don't know, I guess I write for a Big Ten site that focuses on football. Once in a while, it dabbles in on basketball, but traditionally, it is a football website. So if you want to check that out, just follow me on Twitter at KIDCUNI, and I've got a link that goes right to that page. But so that was my day, and now I'm excited to not necessarily turn the page, but actually start talking about basketball for a little bit. This is not Troy and I's whole, Big Ten basketball preview show where we go through every team and talk about, projections and all that stuff. But we're going to just talk about, in general, college basketball. It does start Tuesday night. We are recording the show Tuesday night. Michigan State plays Tuesday night in that Champions Classic that they do every year. So we figured we would get a little something out there for the fans that like Big Ten basketball.
Yeah, and we're going to actually now, this year, we're going to have to call it an annual Big Ten preview show. It'll be our third one. No, our fourth one. Third or fourth?
One.
Fourth one. Fourth.
Yep.
Going on 4 years on the grueling truth. Unbelievable. Yep. That is a long time. Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, we're going to just talk basketball a little bit tonight. And you know what, youngster? You know what the best part about yesterday, tonight, and tomorrow night is? You'll never even guess. I've been itching for this for about 2 months.
What's that?
DraftKings Sportsbook is beta testing in Pennsylvania.
Oh, there you go.
I dabbled last night, and I am addicted. You know I'm a DraftKings fanatic. Now right. I've got Sportsbook, and you know what the best part is? I can use my DraftKings balance in Sportsbook. So I don't know if that's good or bad. It could be. It could be like I'm never talking about DraftKings again because I'm broke. Or it could be like early retirement. I'm so jacked up. Like I'm literally going Sportsbook, Michigan State, Kentucky tonight. They got prop bets, they got player bets, they got everything. It's awesome. But again, I dabble in that. If you don't, that's fine. And again, I have to say this, youngster. I know I talk about DraftKings all the time, but gambling can be addicting. It can become a problem. If you know somebody that has a problem or you yourself have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Get the help. I'm just a fanatic. And you know me, youngster. I don't spend mega dollars. I put down a few bucks here and there, but I play within my means. Some people gets out of hand. So, youngster, I'm excited about this season because we talked about it in football. I said that might be real money bet for me. Now I can actually real money bet. That's awesome. So let's get into it, youngster. Michigan State, Kentucky tonight, right off the bat. Usually I always joke about November basketball, December basketball, and I joke about cupcakes, and I talk about frosting and all kinds of sweetness because most of the schedules are made up of cupcakes. But when you're talking Kentucky, Michigan State, there's no cupcakes to be found unless you're sitting on a couch watching the game eating a cupcake. This should be a good one tonight.
Yes, it should. I personally, I have slacked on my college basketball research. So that is, I guess, partially why. Part of it is time. But partially why this is just kind of an overview show. Again, not getting into every single Big Ten team and what to expect from Nebraska basketball, from their new head coach and all that stuff. But just overarching things, and Tuesday night is when the season begins, and my dog's already barking. Apologies. But so number one, Michigan State. I'll go through the top 25 very quickly.
Little guy's excited about basketball. Can you get mad?
Apparently.
He's ready for basketball.
Yeah,
it's okay. Get him a little water. Get him a little basketball. You'll be good to go.
I guess so. So number one, Michigan State takes on number two, Kentucky Tuesday night. And as you're listening to this, the game will have been concluded. I would be shocked if you are listening to this and the game has not concluded. But so Tuesday night, Michigan State plays Kentucky, and number 3 Kansas takes on number 4 Duke. So it's literally the top 4 teams in the country, according to the AP preseason top 25, and we all know how that goes. But especially in basketball, Football, it can vary quite a bit. Basketball, because of there only being 5 guys on the court, because of if you have one freshman superstar, he can carry you to the tournament alone because 68 teams make it. It's not to say that it's easier to predict basketball, because, Troy and I, especially going over an entire conference and saying, okay, we think this many teams are going to get in the NCAA tournament. We think this team's going to be this. We can miss on some of those, but we know Michigan State's going to be really good. Like Maryland is ranked number 7 in the country. They're going to be really good. Expectations are high. They may fall a little short and, be a 4 or 5 seed and be the number 16 team in the country 12 weeks from now, but they're going to be around that 7 mark. It would be a shocker if Maryland was not a top 25 team, not a top 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, because they've got a bunch of talent. They've got veterans. So basketball, it's just a bit easier. Football, you have one injury to your quarterback. If your quarterback, gets hurt and the backup transfers and, anything can happen in football.
Or you have turmoil in the locker room, which we'll talk about on tomorrow's show.
Yeah, turmoil in the locker room. Very interesting rumors. I don't know if we're going to necessarily say exactly what the rumor is, but there's something going on with Nebraska football.
We'll talk about it tomorrow on our football show. So if you're listening to this show, then just find us on the Grueling Truth, because we're doing a football show. It'll be right behind this post. So just stay tuned. The Youngster and I love talking Big Ten. But I just want to jump in real quick, Youngster. We talked about it, went into our 4th season doing Big Ten basketball. And you know what I think is really neat about this? You talk about 5 players, but you and I have basically seen, we've been there with the one and dones because they're there. But if you think about this, you and I have talked about some of these players now going into the 4th year. The guys that were recruited were the first year we did this. They're now those senior leaders on these teams. And so I just wanted fans to know that are listening in, like, a bunch of yahoos talking about that. No, we've literally followed Big Ten basketball. And before we did the show, we did too. But now we really do, because once football's done, it's all basketball.
Right.
And we've now done and followed these teams for 4 years. And a lot of these guys we're going to be talking about for the 3rd or 4th year. I think that's pretty cool, Kevin. We've seen some of these guys come out of nowhere, and we've seen a lot of these guys grow up. And we've seen a lot of guys falter a little bit. And we've also seen some heartache. And you can mention that with Michigan State.
Yeah. One player from Michigan State, like Cassius Winston, is the preseason, basically player of the year, according to everyone. Like, he's a senior. And so we talked about him 4 years ago as a freshman point guard at Michigan State. So it's cool to see it come full circle. And again, like Troy said, basketball to me is my personal favorite sport. If I really had to pick one, it would be basketball. That's just been my love. Not that I don't love football, because I do. But so I cared, I watched, I have bet on Big Ten basketball teams in the past. But so now to actually talk about it week after week after week after week after week with Troy, year after year after year after year now, you do get more invested, and you do understand more about Michigan State basketball than I did when I was 16 following along. Because again, I'm talking about it weekly. I have to know my stuff. I don't necessarily have to be the world's biggest expert, but I don't have to, or I do have to, not look like an idiot. So again, just overarching stuff on this show. Michigan State, Kentucky, not going to get into the game, not going to talk about who's going to win and any of that stuff. But this Champions Classic, like you mentioned, Troy, it does happen every year. I don't know exactly what year this is of it. It might be the 3rd or 4th year. It might have started when we started doing shows together. But I know it's a fairly recent thing, and every single year Michigan State will either play Kentucky or Kansas or Duke to start the season. And typically those 4 programs are, ranked in the top 10, 15?
Usually preseason at least top 10.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you might get a rebuild from Tom Izzo, and they're ranked 12th to start the season. Right. And you know how much I care about that preseason poll. I put a lot of stock into that preseason AP poll. Woo!
Yeah. And so what you can get from these teams, literally, what you can get from these teams literally being ranked 1, 2, 3, and 4 this year is that they are going to be very good teams. There is a reason for that. Can it all crumble and, again, they turn into a 4 or 5 seed? Sure. But Duke's not going to be bad. Kansas isn't going to be bad. Kentucky's not going to be bad. And Michigan State obviously will not be bad this season. All of them have certainly title aspirations and legitimate ones at that. But so, again, not going to get into Michigan State up and down and not going to get into any of these Big Ten teams thoroughly until whenever Troy and I get around to doing our full preview show. Because, again,
we're a week or two.
Football.
I think we usually do it around the end of right after Thanksgiving. I think we do it usually. Somewhere in there.
Yeah. But so we are focused on football. Football is king in this country. It generates the most talk, and that's, as radio hosts, we care about
you know what's funny though, youngster, is football is the king, right? But March Madness just takes it all though. When you're coming into March and basketball, I would say you get people like, for example, the college football playoff. Yeah, it's awesome. But you and I talked about it last year. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, this is a must. I mean, I watched it. Don't get me wrong. But it's not like there's an excitement. It's like, oh, here we go. Alabama's there, Georgia's there, blah, blah, Clemson's there. And it could be pretty close to being the same again this year. And there's some excitement. There's the college football playoff, national championship. But when you get into March Madness in college basketball, like even for those listening in for the first time, I'm in route sales. I have like 124 customers that I see on a monthly basis. And I've got people asking me questions because everyone knows I do radio when the pool comes out. Like, who are the underdogs? Who are the underdogs? Yeah. And I'm like, we never even talk sports. Why are you asking me? And I'm just talking in general that you'll get these people that get all hyped up about the March Madness basketball pool. There's not that much excitement for the national championship in a general sports fan. But in March Madness, I think everybody knows about March Madness.
Yep.
I mean, it's just something that is one of those events that is just so excitable, and a lot of people can get into that basketball tournament. And you and I, Kevin, we like the underdogs. Yeah, we do our picks, and we usually not a lot of underdogs, but you and I are always rooting for underdogs. I like the underdog aspect of it in that tournament. There's really no underdogs, though, in this classic that's going on right now. You got 4 of the top teams in the country. They very well could end up the way they're ranked right now, flip-flopping teams, and they very all could be number 1 seeds. They're that good. And so I like this in the beginning of the season. Am I going to put, though, much stock, Kevin, if Michigan State goes in and blows out Kentucky by 40? Or if Kentucky blows out Michigan State by 15 or 16, whatever it is? Not really, because it's game 1, November. It'll be a totally different game 3 months from now if they play.
Yeah.
So I don't put a lot of stock into it right now because you've got new components on the court. You've got to integrate these players into your system. You're trying to find out your identity for this season. You could have an off shooting night, blah, blah, blah. You're not battle tested in your conference. It's not really tournament play. Now, don't get me wrong. I guarantee Kentucky and Michigan State both want to start the season with a win over another dominant opponent. But me as a fan, me as a host of this show, when we talk next week about basketball and whether Kentucky or Michigan State wins, okay, there it is. Michigan State won. Kentucky won. Okay, let's move on. Because it's so early in the season. At least that's my thought, youngster.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. Last year, Duke beat the you-know-what out of Kentucky. I'd have to go back and look at the final score. I think it was actually like 40-some points. It was something ridiculous. And it's like, if you're a Duke fan, again, can you take a lot from it? No. But if you're beating a team like Kentucky by 40 to start the year, it truly is national title or bust, and it truly does make you understand how good that team can be. Does it, again, mean a ton in the grand scheme of things? No, because if you really, truly look at it, you brought it up, that these teams are playing the first week of November. The Final Four takes place the first week of April. That's 5 months from now. 5 full months pass. So do things change over the course of 20 weeks and over the course of 40 games being played by these teams? Yeah, a lot changes. So, again, do you take a ton from it? No, and exactly what you said. Whether Michigan State or Kentucky wins, whatever. Will it be interesting if one of them wins by 30? Yeah, then it's a little noteworthy. But, again, in the grand scheme of things, does it mean anything? No, not unless a severe injury happens. Then there is truly something to talk about there. And with Michigan State, for those that don't listen to our, every single word that we say on our football show that we do over at thegruelingtruth.com, Josh Langford, the shooting guard for Michigan State, who played a few games last year and then was out with an injury, re-aggravated that injury a few weeks ago. And so now people are talking about, will he take a medical red shirt? Is this it for him at Michigan State? Will he be back, come conference play? Whatever the case is, we'll see. But that is the crappy news for Michigan State, put it that way. So the other thing I wanted to mention,
it sucks. I like Langford, Kevin. I think he's a good little ball player. Well, he's not a little, but he's a good ball player. And the thing, I find this from my years of playing and coaching and being a fan. There's just some guys that the injury bug finds them and they can't shake it. I mean, you go on a higher level, J.J. Watt, the Texans. Just lately, the injury bug finds him, and it sucks. And Langford just seems these little nagging injuries re-aggravated it. It sucks because they are a much better team when he's on the court. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's a very good player. But, you bring up that question, what is he going to do? I mean, is this guy, he's gonna have to figure it out. Do I want to come back and play another year if I can get a medical red shirt? Do I want to, take my chances and go pro? I mean, the selfish college basketball fan in me, Kevin, says, come back, go red shirt. I want to watch you play another year because I enjoy, and I want to throw this out to the fans, I enjoy college basketball 100 times more than the NBA. It's hands down. I'll sit and watch. I will watch, I don't know, I'm from Pittsburgh. I'll watch Pitt versus Duquesne instead of watching Cleveland versus Miami in the NBA. I mean, it's just that I would prefer that because these kids go out and they play really hard for 40 minutes. So I enjoy college basketball. I'd love for him to come back, but, again, he's got to do his best for himself.
Yeah, it's not known as to when he could return if he does decide to return this season, if that is an option. So it's just a matter of wait and see, basically. But the other thing I want to mention with Michigan State, like you said, 90% of these games are cupcakes for these teams in the Big Ten even. For the non-conference, again, non-conference play basically ends this calendar year. So like the start of the Big Ten season, it doesn't technically start January 2nd, but that's when the bulk of the Big Ten season begins. For Michigan State, they play Rutgers on December 8th. They play Northwestern on December 18th. There's another non-conference game mixed in between those two. But so all these Big Ten teams play 2 games. I think they are all in the early portion of December. And then I could be wrong on that, but every Big Ten team plays 2 before the 2020 calendar year begins. And then once it hits January 1st, January 2nd, whatever that day is, for Michigan State, it's the 2nd. But then it's just all Big Ten basketball from there. That's when 18
they have to. They have to. It changed the number of conference games last year.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to start playing in December. There's no way you can get them all in after the first of the year. You know what else I'm looking forward to, youngster, is the Big Ten ACC Challenge. I love it. I love the Big Ten ACC Challenge. I mean, people can argue those are predominantly the 2 best basketball conferences in America.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, top to bottom, both conferences, and you got, I mean, 14 teams? I don't know. How many in the ACC? Yeah. 13? 14?
ACC might have like 16. ACC is
16.
massive. I think so.
But, I mean, you look at teams, and we talked about this last year. You get teams that are like 9, 10, 11 in the conference. You still got to come out with your A game. Now, these teams are not just going to fall over. Now, the teams that are near the bottom, okay, well, there's your walk in the park. But a lot of times in the Big Ten and the ACC, you're going 8, 9, 10 deep on like competitive games. And then after that, you guys that can maybe throw in a competitive game after that. But, we talked about it last year, Kevin, in the Big Ten. Don't snooze on a ninth place team in the Big Ten because 3 games is separating ninth place from 5th place. And that's what I really love about the Big Ten Conference is that they do battle test themselves during the season. And sometimes it doesn't work out so well in the tournament, but man, they've got to go out night in, night out, and especially on the road in the Big Ten. It's not easy to go on the road in the Big Ten and play basketball.
Yeah, a few things to piggyback off that. Again, this show, it's not really scripted in terms of how we're going to go about it. And, it's not going to be a crazy long show. Again, we're just kind of generally giving a preview to the college
basketball. We're like two guys sitting in a bar stool, drinking a cold one, talking basketball, but we don't have the cold ones involved. And we're not on bar stools. I'm in a car, you're here in your office. So, yeah. But that's what it is. That's how you can relate this show. It's like two guys sitting at the bar talking about basketball. That's what this show's about.
Yeah. Which I like. And don't get me wrong, I love when we go in depth about the teams, all 14 of them, and, say, here we go, this is what this team's about, here are the expectations, here's what they did last year, yada, yada, yada. I love any basketball show we do. I love any show we do in general. But this show is just kind of that off the cuff, hey, you bring up that point, great, let's roll with it. But so you brought up the ACC Big Ten Challenge that happens every year, and Michigan State plays Duke this year. So it just so happens that, that's going to be a phenomenal game. I love that these two conferences decided to do this X amount of years ago. Like you said, though, Troy, most of these games are cupcakes, like Michigan State plays Binghamton, Charleston Southern. They do play Virginia Tech as well. Actually, they might play Virginia Tech in the challenge. ACC, by the way, has 15 teams.
15.
If you didn't hear before. But so Michigan State, I don't know if it's Virginia Tech or Duke that they play in the challenge, but they have both on the schedule. So regardless, they play Oakland, they play Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan. Not a ton of cupcakes, but some. And Michigan State always challenges themselves in the non-conference. I'll give them credit for that. You're not going to go out and play 10 challenging teams before a 20-game Big Ten schedule. That'd be crazy. But Michigan State does challenge themselves. Again, whether it's the Champions Classic, whether it's playing Duke randomly, whether it's, playing an Oakland team that once in a while makes the NCAA tournament. Seton Hall they play November 14th. Seton Hall is ranked 12th in the country to start the year. That's a quality team for sure. They've got one really good player that I know of. So that'll be a really good game. So Michigan State, I always give props to Michigan State. I personally, for those listening, I'm a Duke fan, so hate on me for that. But so I don't have some favorite Big Ten team, but Michigan State is always entertaining for me to watch. Whether they literally are the top team in the country, top team in the Big Ten, or if they're 2 or 3 or 4, usually not lesser than that. But they are always interesting to watch. I love Tom Izzo coach teams, what they do offensively, defensively. I just really like what they do.
Kevin, I want to jump in about the cupcakes. You know how much I make fun of them in football, basketball, whatever sport it is, right? But here's the thing. You look at a 30-some-odd game season schedule for these teams, right? Yeah. And I was a coach once. You have to throw cupcakes in there. And, again, I make fun of them, but you can't expect your guys to go out for 30-some-odd games, and now 20 of those are Big Ten conference games. So you got, 10 to 12 non-conference games. If you have 12 quality non-conference games, and I'm talking like top 40 games where your guys got to play 40 minutes hard, Your guys will
Right.
be dead come tournament time. You've
Yeah.
got to sprinkle them in. Again, I make fun of them. I do that. But as a former coach, I mean, I scheduled junior colleges in our exhibition season because you can't have your guys exerting energy for the full length of games over a long season. The body will just wear out. So you schedule a cupcake, your starters go out, maybe play 5, 6, 7 minutes, and you get some bench guys some valuable experience. And so I don't have a problem with that part of it, and I understand why it's done. But I'll still make fun of them. Like, oh, yeah, you're 10-0 and you play 10 cupcakes. But I understand the concept being a former coach. You just can't have your guys exerting 33 games of effort for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
The guys will be dead in the tournament. So there is a method to it and a madness to it, and it is all part of a plan because you can't have it happen that way. But again, I'm still going to make fun of it, that you're playing cupcakes up and down.
Yeah. I'll move to the AP Top 25, the preseason poll, just to get that out there. Michigan State is number 1. They are the prohibitive favorite going into the season. But again, would it shock anyone if 12 other teams won? No. This is not a year where it's Michigan State or take everyone else. It's not one of those Kentucky classes, those Duke classes where it's like, oh my God, this team is just absolutely freaking loaded. Could they go undefeated? And they never do. But is it one of those years where you just look at one team and say, my God, this team should be the favorite to win it all, no question? I don't think it is. Michigan State is going to be really good, and the injury to Langford hurts. They're definitely not going undefeated. So Michigan State's really good. Everyone understands that. And so is Duke, so is Kentucky, so is Carolina. So, it's the same type of teams in the top 10, I'll just mention the top 12. Michigan State is 1, Kentucky 2, Kansas 3, Duke 4. Louisville is actually really supposed to. Some people think they're the ACC favorite. They're at 5. Florida's really good at 6. Maryland is up at 7, which may surprise some people. Gonzaga 8, big shocker. North Carolina 9, big shocker. Villanova 10, big shocker. Virginia's down at 11 because they lost, realistically, their best players from last year's title team. And then I already mentioned Seton Hall at 12. But so you do have Maryland in there at 7. Ohio State, just to talk about Big Ten stuff, Ohio State's 18, Purdue is 23. And then you've got Illinois and Michigan in others receiving votes. So there are only 4 Big Ten teams.
No Scotty in there.
No Scotty, no.
No Scotty.
And a lot of people think Wisconsin's top 25 worthy team. They'll prove as such they might. But Illinois, Michigan in the others receiving votes. And again, people may raise their eyebrows. Couldn't get that out for a second. Raise their eyebrows at Illinois receiving votes. And I personally am surprised they're not ranked. I'm kind of big on Illinois this year. That's kind of that may be my team that I like. A couple of years ago, Troy and I liked Penn State a lot. Last year, I don't remember if there was a team that I really liked Iowa a year ago.
Here's the waiver for all you Illinois fans listening in. I'm going to apologize now for your disastrous season if the youngsters all in on Illinois. Just ask the Gopher fans in football what happens when one of us is really high on a team. Yeah. You don't talk about that team for a whole year. That is what I did because I felt so bad for bringing a team down just by my comments. Just want to throw it out there, youngster. You should apologize now to the Illinois fans if you're real high on them.
Yeah, probably true. Last year, I really liked Iowa. This year, I really like Illinois. But Iowa last year, I liked their players like 1 through 11. And I know these teams have more. Sometimes they play 11. Sometimes they only play 9 in the game. But I love that Iowa roster a year ago. Michigan State obviously was really fun to watch, and Purdue had Carson Edwards, making 8 threes a game.
Well, you think back, though, to last year, though, youngster, Michigan State struggled in the early part of the year.
Yeah.
they were struggling. I remember we talked about it, like, well, Izzo's got to find out what he's going on. He's got to find his depth, blah, blah, blah. He's going to go 7 deep, 9 deep. And then they had the incident at the school, and we're not going to get into that. You know, that could have played a part in it. But, yeah, Michigan State struggled there in a maybe, a 2-3 week stretch where they were really struggling. And then they got it together. So, and every team, that's the thing with college basketball, Kevin. We talk about on our football portion how every game is so important. Like ask Wisconsin. Ask Wisconsin how every game in football is important. In basketball, I'm not saying it's good, but you can afford a 3-4 game lull where you're not playing good basketball. Maybe the good teams like a Michigan State, they go 2-2. Or even maybe they even go 1-3 and drop from 4 in the country to 11 in the country. But like you said, does it matter at tournament time if you're playing your best basketball? Not really.
Right.
Would you like to be a 1 seed instead of a 2? Of course. Would you like to be a 1 instead of a 3? Of course. But over the course of a season, we're going to see, and as we talk about every Big Ten team, there's going to be that little drought. And every once in a while, youngster, and we've been doing this show now going on 4 years, you have a team that'll go through like that Purdue team of 2 years ago that really never had that lull, and then they got bounced early. So it's almost like you want to have that lull sometime at the end of January, February, because you don't want to have the lull in March. That's the worst time to have it. But most teams that we're going to be talking about for the next 4 months, we're going to get on here and go, what's going on with Michigan? What's going on with, your Illinois that you're high on? Like, oh, man, that was a pretty ugly game. We're going to talk about that often with every team. Even your Duke team, they'll stumble and maybe go, 2-2, like I said, in a 4-game stretch, or 1-2 in a 3-game stretch. But you can't. You can recover in basketball. In football, you can't. You can't recover from one. I mean, you can from one loss, but it's hard.
Right.
It's hard.
It's possible. Yeah. It's possible you can recover from one loss. Not guaranteed. Ohio State's lost 1 game last year. They lost 1 game the year before and didn't make the playoff both years. So it's possible you can recover from it. It's not a given. You lose 2, you're absolutely done. But for basketball, like you said, I think last year Michigan State, they lost 3 games in a row at one point. Again, could be wrong. Don't quote me on anything I'm saying here. I don't have, my book of knowledge in front of me on my computer screen, like I will when I do talk, when Troy and I both talk about these teams in depth. I will know more. But I think Michigan State went through a 3-game losing streak last year during that time. But anyway, so again, 4 AP top 25 Big Ten teams are in there, and then Illinois, Michigan in receiving vote. Not necessarily going to get into those teams. We'll do that later, soon.
No, but it seems awful low for me, Kevin, for a preseason to have that little amount of teams from the Big Ten in the top 25. It just seems like they're not getting a lot of respect this year.
Yeah, I agree. There are, Purdue did lose quite a bit, and so they are down to 23 from almost beating Virginia a year ago in the tournament. Michigan lost quite a lot. They have a new head coach, so they're not even receiving votes, or they're not even in the top 25. But so, and then you've got your surprise teams like Illinois that, do come out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, gee, look at this, So anyway, to talk about, and my dog's going crazy. But so Big Ten teams from the tournament a year ago, I wanted to mention there are 8 Big Ten teams that made the NCAA tournament a year ago. That set a record. We always talk about, how many Big Ten teams are going to make the tournament, this and that. Last year it was a record. 8 of them made the tournament. 7 obviously was the previous record. 8 did a year ago. So like you said, it's kind of surprising to see only 4 from the Big Ten in the top 25.
And I think we were pretty close. We were talking about that in our preview show, that we thought, and I think we even said that there was 9 was it 9 or 10 quality teams, and we knew that they wouldn't get 10 in. It was either 9 or 10. I'd have to go back and listen to the show. But we were talking about how deep the Big Ten was last year, and we thought that they would have a lot of tournament teams. And then you and I were sweating it out for a while in February because these teams were beating each other up, and all of a sudden, record-wise, they were like hovering around 500, a couple games over 500, and we're like, is the Big Ten even going to get 4 teams in? Remember when we were talking about that?
Yeah, I do. Because, again, these teams do go through lulls, and it's like, oh, well, actually, Wisconsin may not make the tournament. So it happens every year where you get those highs of where it's like, dang, 8, 9 teams could frickin' make it. And then a week or two passes, and it's like, well, maybe only 4 make it. So goes.
I think we locked in, like last year. We said there were 6 that we considered locks to make the NCAA tournament. Yeah. Somewhere right around there. That's a pretty high preseason number to say, hey, we think these teams are locks to make the tournament.
Right. Like, according to, if you're going by this top 25, and again, it's never perfect, obviously, but just by the top 25, like, if you're the 25th ranked team, like, you're a 7 seed. It's not as though you're this amazing team ranked at 25 necessarily. So Illinois, Michigan receiving votes, they would be in the tournament if it started today at game 0. But outside of that, like, there's no one you could really count on. So the AP thinks that 6 Big Ten teams are, you could argue, locks. Definitely 4, the 4 that are ranked. But everyone thinks that Illinois, Michigan are top 68 teams and would make it. Outside of that, maybe not. Not necessarily a lock. I'll say this, that the overall thought going into this year is obviously, again, that Michigan State is the favorite. Maryland is the number 2 team. That is the thought. Again, we'll get into these teams more in depth soon. But then after that, it's somewhat of a crapshoot. And again, you can kind of tell that the AP says Ohio State's number 18 in the country. Well, that's not fantastic. Again, 18 would be a 5 seed. If you were to go 1 through 4 as 1 seeds, 5 through 8 are 2 seeds, 9 through 12 are 3 seeds, and so on, like 18 would be a 5 seed. So, they should be good, but they're not necessarily unbelievable. Great, and same goes for Purdue. But so the thought is that teams 3 through 11, that's just kind of what I've gathered. And again, I haven't done all my homework at all, but just from what I've read, from what I know off the top of my head, as far as returners and key recruits coming in and stuff like that, coaching changes, whatever, kind of 11 Big Ten teams are quality, truly quality teams this year. Will 11 make the tournament? Obviously not. Will only, 2, 3 make the tournament? No. It'll be somewhere in between, but there are a lot of quality Big Ten teams. This is going to be a deep conference. It just, looking at teams in the tournament a year ago, like Wisconsin's not among those 6 teams in the top 25 or receiving votes. They're a quality team this year. Where's another one? Iowa. They will be a quality team. Minnesota should be a quality team. Ohio State was an 11 seed last year. They're sitting there at number 18. There are a number of quality teams in the Big Ten. Again, it's going to be
Kevin, I'll let the new listeners kind of know how when we talk about the Big Ten, we always talk about the top tier. Like, these are the dominant teams in the conference. Then we talk about our middle tier. Didn't we have 4 tiers last year? I think we might have went 4 tiers.
I think
so.
We
have that middle of the pack tier, and then we just had the bottom tier. Like, you are the walk in the park people.
Yeah.
But it seems like that middle tier grows and grows and grows, and it's like, who's going to separate them? And then be right below. And we did. We went to 4 tiers last year because we started the preseason with the top, the middle, the bottom. And then halfway through the season, we're like, well, who's going to separate themselves and be in that, like, 3 through 6? And then who's going to be 7 through 10?
Right.
And the Big Ten, Kevin, always, you're talking 11 quality teams. To me, that seems like a norm. It really does. But I can remember, and I'm an older man. I'm pushing 50. I can remember back in the day when I was at the wonderful University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where maybe the Big Ten, maybe you would say is 6 or 7 deep. Now you can go and you can say like 11 quality teams. And back then it was only 10 total. But even then, like the 7th seed in the Big Ten back then was like, okay, that's almost a walk in the park. Like it was a really top-heavy conference when I was growing up. And now, like we mentioned, you get during that season, okay, they're ranked they're an 8th right now. But 2 more wins, and they're in 3rd place. That's the way the conference has been for the last couple of years, Kevin. And I love it. I love the competitive nature of the Big Ten.
Yeah, no question about it. It makes, when we solely focus on basketball and transition from football, it makes the shows that much more interesting because there are so many different quality teams to talk about and so many different intriguing matchups to say, like, well, this team's got a murderous row ahead of them because, look, they play Michigan State and Michigan this week. And, oh, look, next week they play a ranked Wisconsin and Iowa team. And then the game after that, they play a ranked Illinois team. You know, it's just consistent. There are so many solid teams. And as far as elite, Maryland, to me, in my opinion, just cat out of the bag. I really do like that team. Do I think they necessarily can win 6 straight? Probably not. Would it shock me? No. If they did end up winning the NCAA title, it wouldn't shock me. It would just surprise me. They've got a few really good players. They've got a really good guard. They've got Jalen Smith, who's a really good big. Those are a couple NBA names they have. So they have plenty of talent, and they've got key returners, and they've got a coach they've had for a long time. And so they're going to be really good. But again, are they on the same level as what a Michigan State can probably be? Probably not. Or Duke or Kansas or Kentucky or, probably not. They are a notch below. But again, everyone thought Purdue was a notch below all those other teams a year ago, and Purdue took Virginia to the wire and probably should have beat them, outside of a last-second shot by Virginia to bring it to overtime, and eventually Virginia won the game. But Purdue was right there, and Purdue was really hot toward the end of the year in the NCAA tournament. That's why they almost beat Virginia. And to me, they were, if they beat Virginia, they could have won the whole thing a year ago. So could Maryland do that? Sure. But outside of that, like Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, any of these teams not seen in even receiving votes, I don't see Ohio State winning the national title. I don't see Purdue winning the national title this year. So top-level Big Ten teams, Michigan State is there, Maryland is right underneath, and then it kind of drops off to me. But there are a lot of solid teams. That's kind of my thought. That's what a lot of people are thinking, just based on what I've read, realistically. So that's kind of overarching Big Ten thoughts. And
I mean, as a conference, Kevin, and us doing a Big Ten show, it's almost like we want to root for 8 teams to get in again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number.
Yeah, it is.
That's more than half the conference in the big dance.
Yeah.
And you talk about quality teams. Now, a lot of things have to go right, and a lot of things have to happen across the country, too, to get 8 selections in the tournament.
Right.
I mean, there's so many other factors that go into that. But, I guess we root for 8 again. And we'll actually divulge our so-called tournament teams when we do our preview show. What else you got, youngster? This was a good show.
Yeah, I agree. Not a ton. Just to, give fans a little knowledge, like Michigan, obviously coaching change to Juwan Howard. He already pulled a 5-star recruit for next year, not for this year, but he's Juwan Howard, and people will believe in that. If he fails this year miserably, then it's going to go south quickly. If he suddenly turns this team into a top 20 team and they pull off a couple wins in March, then you're going to see even more hype. But, we'll talk more Michigan again when we do our official preview show. going into each and every team. But Michigan's got a new head coach with Juwan Howard, obviously. The Big Ten is deep. Fred Hoiberg is at Nebraska, and I loved Fred Hoiberg at Iowa State. I think he's a phenomenal college coach. Whether he could actually do it in the NBA, he quote-unquote failed in the NBA, and so now he's back in college. But
I'll say this, youngster, I'm going to interrupt you. I say this with college football coaches. I say this I'll say it in basketball. Some people are just meant to coach in college. Yeah. They just are. Doesn't mean they're a bad coach because they want to pursue the professional ranks. But there are some guys that are meant just to be college coaches, a.k.a. Coach K. Would I get on him if he wanted to dabble in the professional ranks? No. But me personally, Coach K at Duke, he's a college coach. Jim Boeheim, another one of those. And you go into the college ranks and you look like Nick Saban. He's a college guy. Urban Meyer, he's a college guy. And again, I'm not saying that they can't go to the next level, but there's some guys that are just meant to coach in college. And on the flip side,
Jim Harbaugh may be an NFL guy, unless he's gotten Andrew Luck. That's completely possible.
And some of these guys that are in the professional ranks say, I can coach college. No, it's a different ball game. And there are some guys that are they're cut from the cloth to be a college coach. And I love those coaches, by the way, Kevin. Those are the truly great college coaches, not just basketball, football too, because it does. Coaching college sports is different than coaching professional sports. I mean, I coached college for 5 years. I was in the ranks of coaching soccer. And there's a lot more involved than coaching on a professional level. You're molding people. You're molding people into a system. You're like I'll say it this way. I don't want to use the word you're like their dad, but you're that.
Some kids look at it that way. You see that in football a lot, where they talk about family, and players will talk about family, and the coaches will talk about being a family, and that's what they kind of preach. Some of them do.
Well, and I've shared with you stories about former players of mine that have reached out, have found me now because of social media. Some of the things that I didn't even know. Sometimes you don't even know the impact that you've had on these kids. And I'm even talking when I coached in high school. You run across them or you run across their parents, and you hear about things like, you were this and that, and it's like, wow, I didn't realize. And you don't. When you're coaching, you don't realize some of the things and some of the impact that you have on these players. Because a lot of times you're tough on them. It's tough love as a coach. But I didn't mean to get off the point on that. I just wanted to mention, though, that sometimes guys are just meant to be in college. And can he do a good job at Nebraska? I think so. Can he go down there and can he recruit quality players where he's at? Sure, why not? Can he make Nebraska one of those teams that are in the middle of the pack, that maybe try to separate themselves to go in that top 5? Sure. He did it at Iowa State.
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa State and Nebraska, to me, very similar locales. His recruiting base and all his recruiting connections. I mean, Iowa State was a team that was nationally ranked, and a team that nobody wanted to play in tournaments because of how good they were. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in Nebraska. What else you got?
I agree. To me, he was a massive get for Nebraska over the offseason. Just a little context, like they have 11 new scholarship players on the roster, so don't expect Fred Hoiberg to take them to 25-5 and make them a 4 seed. But some places it takes a little time, and like for him, you mentioned the NBA thing, and sometimes you're a college coach. Like with the Bulls, what was Fred Hoiberg supposed to do with the Bulls? Did he have LeBron? Did he have superstars on his team? If you don't have superstars on your team in the NBA, you're not going to make a ton of noise. Like, you're just not. You may be a 6 seed in the playoffs, and you'll lose in, 5 games in the first round. But unless you've got those next-level guys, it's kind of hard to win in the NBA. It just is. And if you're in the NFL and you don't have a franchise quarterback or one of those ridiculous defenses, good luck. I mean, really. Any NFL team that's really good, either you got a really good franchise quarterback leading the way, or you've got one of those ridiculous defenses. One of the two. So, ultimately, Fred Hoiberg is back in the college ranks, and I'm excited to see what he does at Nebraska over time. This year, not high expectation. Again, a Big Ten first team, I'm just going through a couple things that I wanted to get to. Cassius Winston, obviously, since he's the player of the year for the preseason. But Lamar Stevens.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's solid. Lamar Stevens at Penn State, we've talked about him over the years. He's very talented. Last year, 19 points a game, basically 20, over 7 rebounds a game. Again,
nobody talked about him because Penn State pooed the bed.
Right. Exactly. Maryland, I talked about the really good guard they have, the really good forward they have. Anthony Cowan Jr. is a senior point guard. He is a senior point guard who's very good. So that helps in college basketball. And then Jalen Smith probably could have been a first-round pick, back-end first-round pick of the NBA draft a year ago. He's back. He averaged over 11 and almost 7 rebounds.
The greedy fan in me says yes. That's what it is. I'm glad he's back.
Yeah. So he was a freshman a year ago. He's a sophomore now. You should see a big uptick. And Bruno Fernando's gone for Maryland, the big center they had. So he is truly the go-to big now at Maryland. So you'll certainly hear more of him. Caleb Wesson is the other first-team guy from the Big Ten, another big at Ohio State, basically 14-7. He's, again, obviously a really good player as a member of the Big Ten first team. Illinois, their star. They've got a guard who's going to be an NBA player, Ayo Dosunmu. I've got to make sure I get that name correct. But last year as a freshman, he showed promise, and so obviously the expectation is that he takes another step up. Other guys, Michigan State's got a number of them. Wisconsin, Brad Davison's definitely going to have to pick up some slack now that Ethan Happ's gone. We'll certainly talk about Wisconsin in depth when we truly do our preview show. But, there's a number. I
wonder why that is.
Yeah, I wonder. There's a number of really good players in this conference, and Iowa's got some, but in any case, that's really all that I wanted to talk about, unless you've got other stuff, Troy. But I really like Illinois going into this year, and the Big Ten is deep, and Michigan State's probably in a class of its own. Maryland's going to be really good. Then you got a bunch of solid teams underneath it. And we'll go and see what's to come.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. I mean, you and I could sit on this show for another 3-4 hours and just, like you said, off the cuff. Oh, yeah, you brought that up. Oh, yeah, let's go there. But we're not going to do that. We're going to end it because we're about an hour in, right around that time, maybe a little bit over an hour. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed this. I guess we'll call it the off-the-cuff show for basketball.
Right.
And, tomorrow we're going to record our first college football ranking show, talk about who's in the college football playoff ranking and what it means for the Big Ten. And then we'll actually recap the 4 games from last weekend and look forward to the games ahead. And, man, we got to turn our locks of the week up around in football, Kevin. We really do. This Go Big or Go Home show, lock of the week, people are laughing at us about it. But on the flip side, maybe we're actually doing a service to people, because if they know we're so bad at it, that they're like, oh, well, the youngster old man, we'll just go opposite of what they say, and then we'll make some money.
That's what you should do. Yeah.
So, all righty, youngster, let everyone know where they can find us, because we do a number of things all over the place.
Last thing, hopefully Rutgers makes the CIT this year. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm giving up. I'm giving up on that boat. 3 years. 3 years I've been praying for them to get in the postseason. 3 years. I don't know if I can handle a fourth. My hair might turn gray wishing that they'll get in the postseason.
Yeah. Not NCAA tournament talk, and Troy talked about the NIT a year ago. I talked about the CIT. They didn't make that either. But we'll see what's in store this year with the Scarlet Knights. Again, we'll talk more in depth about these teams, and we'll be sure to let you know in order to catch that show when we do record it.
We will promote the heck out of it.
Yeah. When we do, find us on Twitter at youngsteroldman. That's where all of our shows that Troy and I do, whether it's Denver Sports Talk, whether it's Cleveland Sports Talk, whether it's Pittsburgh Sports Talk, whether it's National Sports Talk, whether it's Big Ten football, Big Ten basketball. The point is we do a number of shows. And at youngsteroldman on Twitter, facebook.com/youngsteroldman, those are our key pages that we keep to date. Troy keeps to date in particular. Thank you, Troy, for that. But also at thegruelingtruth.com, obviously, is where you can find our Big Ten stuff if you are just into the Big Ten Conference, which, if you're listening to this as I am talking an hour in about Big Ten basketball, you're a Big Ten fan. So gruelingtruth.com is where our Big Ten shows get posted to. And again, on Twitter at youngsteroldman is where
we also have a webpage, Youngster.
It's true. youngsteroldman.home.blog is our home webpage. Again, thanks to Troy.
Well, no thanks. Just want to get our stuff out to the listeners. So that's why we do this. I mean, we would do it even if we had 0 listeners because we just like talking about sports. But we happen to have a lot of listeners, and we enjoy that. And because of that, I'll just say this, because of you listening in right now is the reason that Kevin and I keep expanding and doing more and more shows on different venues. I mean, it just the opportunities to do that are great, and it wouldn't be that way if it wasn't for people listening in. So thank you. We appreciate it. We do this for the fans. We may sound like idiots sometimes. We may sound like we know what we're talking about sometimes. The thing we do, Kevin, we just tell it how it is. We take what we know, take the knowledge we have, talk about our opinion. You're either going to agree with it, disagree with it, but either way, we're just going to give it to you straight. Hope you enjoyed the show today, everyone. For the Youngster Band, we'll get back at you. Different time, same place here on thegruelingtruth.com. Have a good night, everyone.